When the PlayStation 5 was released in 2020, there were much aspects of optimism for the particular console and what it could mean for video gaming as a modern method of artistic expression for the 2020s. But due to various circumstances, this did not occur. On the consensus from players, critics, or even analysts now all agree that the ninth generation of gaming consoles, as they were later known as, was not as influential as it could have been, or even should have been. But the speculative scenario is this: Sony publicly admitted the PlayStation 5 was a financial and social failure. The PlayStation 4 throughout its lifespan was considered an extraordinarily flexible console from its early era through the middle era and into its later era. Particularly through the middle and later years for the console, it earned more praise as graphics, quality, and potential surpassed developers' expectations for what games could have still been released for it. From information now known, Sony had problems with the PlayStation 5 console, but decided to release it hoping to deal with these particular situations with the PlayStation 5 as they arose. From 2020 through 2023, there was a global shortage with computer chips which crippled the global technological base for supply chains from manufacturers to even producers, who use the computer products for nearly everything. Despite this, Sony released models of the PlayStation 5 during this time, and there were not enough supply-based consoles for demand. This was something of a grave concern, but an unexpected problem which Sony publicly declared to be not of a major issue. But privately, the company was worried about the sheer lack of interest for pre-orders with potential buyers, and an increase of focus with the reliability of the PlayStation 4 due in part to the lack of PlayStation 5 consoles. Due to the chip shortage for console production on the COVID-19 pandemic of the early 2020s, Sony was actually forced to temporarily raise the price of the console to take into consideration production, manufacturing, and shipping costs for the console in the global market. Despite sales for the console, Sony recorded record profits for the PlayStation 4, and as a result of the times then, all games were released for both the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. For a number of years, there were nearly no exclusive games for the PlayStation 5, which encouraged gamers to remain with their PlayStation 4 consoles and not necessarily upgrade to the PlayStation 5. Scalpers also bought consoles and further drove up the prices for consoles, which kept away many potential buyers of the time out of fears of buying the console at too high of a price. Even when computer chip production was stabilized, sentiment from gamers and opinions from critics still held the console to not necessarily be worth the effort to obtain. Even when the PlayStation 5 Pro was released in late 2024, the initial price for the updated console representing the PlayStation 5 was technically more than competition consoles, and the decision to buy a console was only viable if the said individual had never even owned a PlayStation 5 and did not make much sense to those who already had a PlayStation 5 console to upgrade after the PlayStation 5's release, and lack of many exclusives for the console for a number of years led to many considering it to be inferior when in relation to the PlayStation 4, and critics later considered the gaming generation to be a failure. While Sony as a company did not make much public statements for such a claim, these were not made long after the console was made available for consumer purchase. Even into the later years of the PlayStation 5, opinions of it that it was not much more stronger with gaming potential or processing power than the PlayStation 4, and that a true next generation console would have been theoretically the PlayStation 6 or PlayStation 7 according to opinions or sentiment of the time. Even when Sony released console bundles to promote the console, sales of such did not necessarily make much of a difference to increase popular opinion with the PlayStation 5. Gamers later mentioned that a good amount of those who had bought a PlayStation 5 had release or shortly after had mixed sentiment about if their investment in a PlayStation 5 was worth it, or if they should have spent their money on a competitor's console or affiliated games.